World War II, the deadliest and most destructive conflict in human history, claimed tens of millions of lives. The incomprehensible human cost was accompanied by devastation on a vast scale. Cities were gutted, masterpieces were looted, cathedrals were burned to the ground. A few instances of cultural destruction became famous, such as the 1944 bombing of the Abbey of Monte Cassino. Less well known are the many Roman artifacts and buildings that were damaged or destroyed during the fighting. This video surveys 4 of the greatest losses. Number 4. The Sarcophagi of the Camposanto. The Piazza dei Miracoli in Pisa is one of the great achievements of medieval architecture, and one of the most beautiful places in Italy. There are 4 buildings on the piazza. The domed baptistry on the left in this video, the Camposanto, the low white building to the right of the baptistry, the huge and magnificent cathedral, a Romanesque masterpiece dating to the 11th century, and decorated, as you can see here, with ranks of arches and bands of gray marble. And, last but not least, the famous Leaning Tower, the cathedral's vertically challenged campanile. The Leaning Tower, of course, is one of the most famous buildings on Earth. But art historians tend to get more excited about the least imposing structure on the piazza, the Camposanto, a monumental cemetery for the great and good of Renaissance Pisa. The Camposanto is a long cloister centered on a green lawn. For centuries, it was famous throughout Europe, less from the elegant simplicity of its design than from the artistic treasures it contained. Every available surface inside its marble walls was brilliant with frescoes by early Renaissance masters. Beneath those frescoes stood a massive collection of Roman statues and sarcophagi. The sarcophagi were especially impressive, marble masterpieces, splendidly carved, that had been collected by Pisan captains and diplomats from every corner of Italy. Some of the sarcophagi were reused to bury distinguished Pisans. Others were simply admired as the artistic treasures they were. On July 27, 1944, an Allied artillery shell struck the Camposanto's roof. The wooden rafters caught on fire, and soon the entire roof was burning. Molten lead ran in streams down the walls, destroying most of the frescoes and puddling on the sarcophagi. The extreme heat and contact with boiling metal cracked and pulverized marble, reducing most of the Camposanto's proud collection of ancient sculpture to glowing rubble. After Allied troops liberated Pisa 5 weeks later, a team led by the American art historian Dean Keller, one of the famous Monuments men, tried to save what was left of the Camposanto. Workmen gathered up thousands of fragments from the shattered frescoes and scraped hardened lead from all the sarcophagi that could be salvaged. Today, thanks to decades of diligent restoration work, visitors to the Camposanto can admire a few of the original frescoes and a modest collection of Roman sarcophagi. All this, however, is a shadow of what was lost during the war. Number 3. The ancient collections of the Berlin State Museums. Tens of thousands of cultural treasures were looted or destroyed during the Second World War. The worst offenders were the Nazis, who confiscated or forced the sale of many art collections belonging to Jewish families. But in the spring of 1945, as the Allied armies converged on Berlin, Germany itself was subjected to looting on a vast scale. The collections of Germany's greatest museums were no exception. Since the mid-19th century, Germany's premier historical museums have been clustered on a small island in central Berlin. By the beginning of the Second World War, these museums housed one of Europe's most important collections of classical antiquities. In the closing stages of the war, as Allied bombing raids intensified and it became increasingly clear that enemy forces would reach Berlin, the museum directors tried to move the collections to safety, storing movable artifacts in the vaults of the Mint and inside 2 of Berlin's massive concrete flak towers. In April 1945, As the Red Army closed in, armored convoys transferred part of the museum's collection to salt mines west of the city. Many of the most precious artifacts, however, remained in Berlin. Although the museum buildings were badly damaged by Allied bombing, the artifacts in the flak towers remained secure until the Soviets entered the city. During the chaos of the Battle of Berlin, several fires broke out in one of the flak towers, destroying hundreds of precious Renaissance paintings and an unknown number of Greek and Roman artifacts. As German resistance ended, the surviving artifacts hidden in the Mint and flak towers were left unguarded. Some were looted by individuals. Most, however, were confiscated by the Red Army and sent as spoils of war to the Soviet Union. The confiscated antiquities remain a topic of contention between Germany and Russia today. Thanks to this dispute, to Soviet secrecy, and to the fog that surrounds the fall of Berlin, we'll never know how much of the Berlin Museum's collections was destroyed in the last days of the war, and how much lies hidden in private collections and Russian storerooms. Number 2. The Crypt of Cocceius. In a normal year, a trickle of tourists ventures out to the ancient sites west of Naples. Few of these visitors pause to notice the narrow drive, potholed and partly overgrown, that branches off from the main road to Cumae. Those who follow that drive are soon stopped by a metal gate. Beyond, a tunnel extends off into darkness. This is the Crypt of Cocceius, known in Italian as the Grotta di Cocceo, or Grotta della Pace. Whatever you call it, this is the longest road tunnel ever built by the Romans. The tunnel was a product of the civil wars that ushered in the reign of Augustus. It was built in 37 BC on the orders of Agrippa, Augustus's right-hand man, who was then preparing a fleet against the rebel Sextus Pompeius. To create a safe harbor for training his crews, Agrippa linked a lake to the Bay of Naples with canals, and had the gifted engineer Lucius Cocceius Auctus bore a tunnel through the hill that lay between the new harbor and the town of Cumae. The tunnel Cocceius excavated was about 1 kilometer long and wide enough for fully loaded carts to drive through. It was lit and ventilated by a series of light wells up to 30 meters deep and paralleled by an aqueduct channel. Though the military need for the tunnel lasted only a few years, it survived the Middle Ages virtually intact and was reactivated as a road tunnel in the 19th century. The Crypt of Cocceius remained in use until the Second World War, when the fascist government decided to store munitions in the ancient tunnel. You can probably guess where this is going. In 1943, Nazi soldiers retreating from Naples set off the stored explosives, causing catastrophic damage. The tunnel has been closed ever since. Number 1. The Nemi Ships. Lake Nemi, about 25 kilometers from Rome, was, and is, a beautiful place. Located in the crater of an extinct volcano, it was ringed by dense woods and the palatial villas of the Roman elite. The lake was sacred to the goddess Diana, whose ancient sanctuary stood on the north shore. Even at noon, it was said, the reflection of the moon, Diana's symbol, could be seen on the still waters. By tradition and Roman law, no ship could sail on the sacred lake. But Caligula, either because he was unimpressed by the prohibition, or because he wished to honor Diana with floating sanctuaries, ordered the construction of 2 gargantuan barges on Lake Nemi. The barges were among the largest wooden ships ever constructed. One was 73 meters long and 24 meters wide. The other was only slightly smaller. Each was a floating palace, complete with heated marble floors, shady gardens, working fountains, and even baths. After Caligula's assassination, the barges were neglected and soon sank. They were remembered only by local fishermen, who occasionally recovered bits and pieces of wreckage. In 1446, inspired by the Renaissance enthusiasm for all things Roman, a cardinal attempted to raise one of the ships by building a large floating platform on the surface of the lake and hiring divers to attach chains to the wreck. Almost as soon as the men on the platform began to winch the ship upward, however, the chains snapped, and only a few fragments were brought to the surface. A second attempt, equally unfruitful, was made in 1535 using a primitive diving bell. A more successful effort to recover artifacts from the wrecks was mounted in 1895, when an enterprising explorer managed to recover some of the elaborate mooring rings, railings, and bronze fittings from the ships. These artifacts can still be seen in a special room of Rome's Palazzo Massimo Museum. Finally, in 1928, Mussolini ordered the recovery of Caligula's barges by any means necessary. It was decided that the only practical method was to drain Lake Nemi down to the level of the shipwrecks. This was a major undertaking, since one of the ships was 10 meters underwater, and the other, half buried in muck, was 20 meters below the surface. A pumping station was established on the lakeshore and began funneling water out to sea through an ancient drainage channel. After 6 months of continuous pumping, the prow of the first ship appeared. Another 6 months of drainage revealed the entire ship, which was reinforced with modern timbers and moved ashore on a purpose-built railway. The other ship, 10 meters deeper, was more difficult to recover. The pumps soon exposed most of the hull, but before it could be freed from the mud, the drying lake bottom shifted, stopping the work and allowing water to cover the wreck again. It was only in late 1932, a year and a half after it first surfaced, that the second ship could be uncovered and moved ashore. The two ships were moved into a specially built museum, which opened with great fanfare in 1936. The ships were displayed in their entirety, alongside their colossal anchors and cases of artifacts found in the lakebed. Disaster struck only a few years later. In May 1944, during Allied shelling of a nearby German artillery post, fire broke out in the museum, started either by a shell fragment or by Nazi arsonists. However the fire started, it destroyed both ships entirely, leaving only a few bronze fittings. The museum was reopened a few years later and can still be visited today, but the Nemi Ships are gone forever, the greatest ancient casualty of the Second World War. In the coming months, alongside my other series, I plan to release more videos about the often surprising connections between World War II and antiquity, so please stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, and haven't yet been subjected to my sales pitch, you might enjoy my book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants, available now wherever books are sold. Thanks for watching.